Y'all, let me tell you about my wedding day. Picture this: champagne flowing, diamonds sparkling, at the most expensive wedding of the year. Then my husband's ex-girlfriend stands up and calls me a gold digger who doesn't belong. What happened next? Girl, let me tell you why that was the biggest mistake of her life. Before I dive into this wild story that changed my life forever, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss stories like this. And drop a comment letting me know. Have you ever had someone try to embarrass you in public? Now let me tell you about the day I learned what it really means to have someone fight for you. My name is Denise, and let me start by saying, I never thought I'd be telling this story. 3 years ago, I was just a 28-year-old architect trying to make my mark in San Francisco. I had my own firm specializing in sustainable housing projects. You know, trying to make homes that actually helped communities instead of just making rich people richer. I wasn't looking for love, definitely wasn't looking for a billionaire, but sometimes life has other plans. I met Jonathan at a charity gala for affordable housing. Now, I usually avoided those fancy events because, let's be real, most of the time it's just rich people patting themselves on the back while writing checks to feel better about their privilege. But this one was different. They actually wanted to hear from architects who were doing real work in underserved communities. I was presenting my latest project, a housing development in Oakland that used solar panels and community gardens, when I noticed this tall white man in an expensive suit really paying attention. Not the polite, fake attention you usually get at these things, but genuine interest. He was taking notes, asking real questions about sustainability and community impact. After my presentation, he approached me. "I'm Jonathan Pierce," he said, extending his hand. That was incredible. I've been looking for someone who actually understands how to build communities, not just buildings. Now I knew exactly who Jonathan Pierce was. The tech billionaire who'd made his fortune by age 30, with some app that I honestly still don't fully understand. But what surprised me was that he knew my work. He'd researched my projects, understood my vision. We ended up talking for 2 hours about everything from architecture to social justice to our favorite books. He asked for my number, and I gave it to him. Not because he was rich, honey, I had my own money, but because for the first time in years, someone actually saw me, the real me. Our first date was supposed to be dinner at some fancy restaurant, but Jonathan called me that afternoon. "I know this might sound weird," he said, "but would you rather go to Home Depot and then grab tacos?" See, I'd mentioned I was working on a community center project and needed to pick up some materials. Most men would have just nodded politely, but Jonathan wanted to see my work. We spent 3 hours walking through Home Depot while I explained sustainable building materials, then ate the best fish tacos of our lives at this little truck in the Mission District. That's when I knew he was different. He wasn't trying to impress me with his money. He was trying to understand my world. Over the next year, we fell in love. Real love. The kind where he'd bring me coffee at 2 a.m. when I was working late on blueprints, and I'd drag him to community meetings so he could understand the neighborhoods we were building in. He supported my work, invested in my projects, but never tried to control or change what I was doing. Now let me tell you about Vanessa Cole. Jonathan had told me about his ex early in our relationship. They'd dated for 2 years, and according to him, it was all surface level. Fancy parties, expensive vacations, Instagram perfect moments, but no real connection. She was more interested in being seen with me than actually knowing me, he'd explained. When I tried to talk about anything meaningful, her eyes would just glaze over. They'd broken up about 6 months before we met. She'd wanted him to propose, but he realized they had nothing in common beyond looking good together at galas. I never met Vanessa during our dating period, but I heard about her. She was old money San Francisco. Her family had been wealthy for generations. The kind of woman who went to the right schools, joined the right clubs, married the right men. Everything I wasn't. And honey, she did not take well to Jonathan, dating a black woman from Oakland who actually worked for her money. Jonathan proposed on the roof of the community center I'd designed in West Oakland. Not some fancy restaurant or exotic vacation. Right there in the middle of the neighborhood where I'd grown up. He got down on one knee while kids played in the courtyard below and said, "You've shown me what it means to build something that matters. Will you build a life with me?" The ring was beautiful, but what made me cry was the donation check he handed me after I said yes. $2 million for my nonprofit to build more community centers in underserved neighborhoods. "I don't want a wife who gives up her dreams for me," he said. "I want a partner who makes the world better. That's my husband, y'all. That's the man I married." Planning our wedding was mostly smooth. Jonathan's parents were a little, let's call it, surprised when they first met me. Not hostile, just clearly not what they'd expected. But they came around once they saw how happy their son was and realized I wasn't going anywhere. My parents were over the moon. Mama kept crying happy tears and talking about how proud she was of the woman I'd become. Daddy kept asking Jonathan about his intentions until I had to tell him to stop. We decided on a vineyard wedding in Napa Valley. Classy, but not too stuffy. 200 guests, family, close friends, some business associates. The kind of wedding where people actually celebrated love instead of just networking. But about a month before the wedding, we heard through mutual friends that Vanessa had been talking, saying things like, "It won't last," and "She's obviously just after his money." Jonathan was furious, but I told him to let it go. "Baby," I said, "secure people don't need to tear others down. She's showing everyone exactly who she is." I had no idea she was planning to show up to our wedding. October 15th, 2022. The most beautiful day of my life, until it almost became the worst. The vineyard looked like something out of a fairy tale. White roses and eucalyptus everywhere, string lights twinkling as the sun set over the valley. My dress was custom made by a black designer from Atlanta, off-the-shoulder lace with a cathedral train that made me feel like a queen. Walking down that aisle and seeing Jonathan's face, honey, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. He started crying before I was halfway to the altar. This billionaire tech genius, crying like a baby because he was so happy to marry me. Our vows were perfect. He promised to support my dreams and fight alongside me for the communities we both cared about. I promised to build a life with him that honored both our backgrounds and created something new and beautiful together. The ceremony was flawless, not a dry eye in the house. Even Jonathan's stuffiest business partners were wiping their faces. After the ceremony, during cocktail hour, I noticed her, Vanessa Cole, standing near the bar in a white dress, which, honey, is tacky as hell at someone else's wedding. But that's just who she is. She was someone's plus one, though we never figured out whose. "Don't let her ruin your day," my maid of honor whispered in my ear. "She's not worth it." I nodded, but I had this feeling in my stomach, like something bad was coming. Dinner was magical. Jonathan and I sat at our sweetheart table, feeding each other bites of our meal and laughing at the speeches from our wedding party. His best man told embarrassing stories about their college days. My sister talked about how I'd always dreamed of designing homes for families and how proud she was that I'd never given up. Then it was time for our father-daughter dance. Daddy had chosen "Isn't She Lovely" by Stevie Wonder, the same song he used to sing to me when I was little. We were swaying on the dance floor, him whispering how proud he was of me, when I saw movement in my peripheral vision. Vanessa was walking toward us, fast, with purpose. "Excuse me," she said, her voice loud enough to cut through the music. "I need to interrupt this performance." The music stopped. Every conversation in the room died. 200 people turned to stare at us. My daddy stepped slightly in front of me, protective instincts kicking in. "Miss, this is a private family moment," he said politely. But Vanessa wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me with pure hatred in her eyes. "I just think," she announced, her voice carrying across the silent room, "that everyone should know what kind of person Jonathan really married." Jonathan was already moving toward us, his face darker than I'd ever seen it. But Vanessa kept talking. This woman is nothing but a gold digger from the hood who trapped a good man with her poverty story. She doesn't belong in our world, and everyone here knows it. Look at her, she'll never be one of us, no matter how expensive her dress is or how many charity cases she pretends to care about. The silence was deafening. I felt like every eye in the room was burning into me, judging me, waiting to see what I would do. But you know what? I'd been dealing with people like Vanessa my whole life. Every corporate boardroom, every city planning meeting, every networking event. There was always someone who looked at me and saw what I wasn't instead of what I was. I stepped forward, past my daddy's protective arm, and looked Vanessa directly in the eyes. You know what, Vanessa, I said, my voice calm and clear. You're absolutely right about one thing. I don't belong in your world. I could hear gasps around the room, and I saw confusion flash across her face. I don't belong in a world where people think love is about status instead of partnership, where success is measured by how many people you can look down on instead of how many you can lift up, where someone would crash a wedding to spread hate because they can't stand to see other people happy. I took another step closer. You want to know what kind of person I am? I'm the kind who builds homes for families who've been forgotten, who fights for communities that people like you pretend don't exist, who earned everything I have through hard work and integrity. And yes, I'm the kind of woman who is lucky enough to find a man who loves me for exactly who I am, not who he thinks I should be. The room was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. But you're also right that I'll never be one of you. Thank God. Before Vanessa could respond, Jonathan was beside me. And honey, let me tell you, I had never seen him so angry. Get out, he said to Vanessa, his voice low and dangerous. Right now. Jonathan, I'm trying to save you from making the biggest mistake of your life, she started. The biggest mistake of my life, he interrupted, his voice rising, was wasting 2 years with someone so shallow, so cruel, and so pathetic that she would crash my wedding to insult my wife. He moved to stand between us, protecting me from her venom. Denise is worth 10 of you. She's brilliant. She's kind. She makes the world better just by being in it. And she chose me, not my money, not my status, but me. Something you never did and never could do. He signaled to security. Escort Miss Cole off the property immediately. If she tries to come back, call the police. As security approached, Vanessa looked around the room desperately, maybe expecting someone to defend her, but every single person was looking at her with disgust and embarrassment. This isn't over, she hissed as they led her away. Jonathan took my hand and faced our guests. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry you had to witness that. But I'm not sorry you got to see exactly why I married the most incredible woman in the world. Now let's continue celebrating. The room erupted in applause. People were cheering, crying, rushing over to hug us. My mama was sobbing with pride. Jonathan's mother came over and hugged me tight, whispering, "I'm so sorry," in my ear. The wedding continued beautifully after that. We danced, we laughed, we celebrated with people who truly loved us. But Jonathan was different for the rest of the night. Quieter, thoughtful. The next morning, during our honeymoon planning, he looked at me seriously. What Vanessa did was unforgivable, he said. But it was also revealing. I need to understand why she thought she could get away with it. That's when Jonathan decided to look into Vanessa's background more carefully. He hired a private investigator, not to harass her, but to understand what was really going on. What we discovered was shocking. Remember how I told you Vanessa was old money? Well, that was only partially true. Her family had been wealthy, but they'd lost most of their fortune in bad investments over the past decade. The Cole family was basically broke, living off credit and the last remnants of trust funds. Vanessa's lifestyle, the designer clothes, the luxury apartment, the expensive car, was all financed by debt and family connections that were rapidly disappearing. She wasn't the secure socialite she pretended to be. She was desperate. And here's the really messed up part. Her family's construction company had several contracts with Jonathan's businesses. Not huge deals, but enough to keep them afloat. She probably thought if she could break us up and get back together with Jonathan, she could save her family's financial situation. Her racism wasn't just personal hatred. It was economic desperation disguised as superiority. Once Jonathan learned about the business connections, he made some calls. Nothing illegal or unethical, but those contracts that were up for renewal, they weren't renewed. The coal construction company had to find other clients. Jonathan also quietly let his business network know what had happened at our wedding. Not in a vindictive way, but these are people who work together regularly. Word spreads. Within a month, the Cole family found themselves increasingly shut out of their social and business circles. Not because of some coordinated campaign, but because most decent people don't want to associate with someone who would do what Vanessa did. Meanwhile, something beautiful was happening with my work. The story of our wedding, not the drama, but my response to it, had somehow gotten out. A video of my speech went viral on social media, and suddenly I was getting calls from all over the country. Architects, city planners, community leaders. They all wanted to work with the woman who'd stood up to a racist bully with such grace and dignity. My firm got contracts in Los Angeles, Chicago, Atlanta, projects I'd only dreamed of. But more importantly, young Black women started reaching out to me. Students, professionals, entrepreneurs. They said seeing me refuse to be diminished had inspired them to stand up in their own lives. That meant more to me than any business success. Fast forward 6 months, Jonathan and I were stronger than ever. We'd bought a house in Oakland near my childhood neighborhood, and I was designing a new community center for the area. Jonathan had started a foundation focused on affordable housing and sustainable development. We were having dinner at our favorite taco truck when my phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a social media post. It was a picture of Vanessa in a retail uniform, working at a department store counter. The caption read something like, "From socialite to sales associate, how the mighty have fallen." I showed Jonathan, expecting him to laugh or make a joke. Instead, he looked sad. "I don't take pleasure in her struggles," he said. "What she did was wrong, but I hope she's learning from this. Maybe working a real job will teach her something about the people she used to look down on." That's my husband, y'all. Even after everything, he chose compassion over revenge. Here's what I learned from this whole experience. Standing up for yourself isn't about being aggressive or getting revenge. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let others diminish it. Vanessa tried to embarrass me by pointing out all the ways I was different from her world. But those differences weren't weaknesses. They were my strengths, my background, my work, my values. Those things made me who I was. And who I was is exactly who Jonathan fell in love with. When someone tries to tear you down, especially using racism or classism, they're usually revealing more about their own insecurities than anything about you. Vanessa wasn't really attacking me. She was expressing her own fear of becoming irrelevant. But the real lesson came from watching Jonathan's response. He didn't just defend me in the moment. He showed me what it means to have a true partner. Someone who sees your worth even when others try to diminish it. Someone who uses their privilege to protect and uplift rather than just talking about it. Too many women settle for men who claim to love them but won't stand up for them when it matters. Jonathan showed me that real love is active, not passive. It fights for what it values. Today, 2 years after our wedding, we're happier than ever. My architecture firm is thriving, working on projects that are actually changing communities. Jonathan's foundation has funded housing developments in 12 cities. We have a beautiful life together, not because of his money, but because we built it on shared values and genuine love. As for Vanessa, I heard through the grapevine that she eventually moved back in with her parents and is slowly rebuilding her life. I hope she learned something from everything that happened. I hope she's working on becoming the kind of person who builds others up instead of tearing them down. But honestly, I don't think about her much anymore. She was a moment in our story, not the main character. The main characters are me and Jonathan, building something beautiful together. If you're watching this and you've ever been in a situation where someone tried to make you feel like you don't belong, remember this: you belong wherever your character, your work, and your love have earned you a place. Don't let anyone else's insecurity become your self-doubt. Don't let their limitations become your boundaries. And definitely don't let their racism, classism, or any other ism convince you that you're anything less than worthy of respect and love. Stand up for yourself with dignity. Surround yourself with people who see your worth. And never ever apologize for being exactly who you are. Because, honey, the right people will love you not despite your background, but because of everything that made you who you are. That's what I learned on my wedding day when a jealous ex-girlfriend tried to embarrass me and ended up showing everyone exactly why my husband chose me over her. So that's my story. How one woman's jealousy and racism backfired in the most spectacular way possible. Sometimes life has a way of teaching people lessons they'll never forget, and karma serves justice better than we ever could ourselves. What do you think? Have you ever had to stand up to someone who tried to put you down? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed hearing my story, smash that like button, subscribe for more real talk about life, love, and standing up for yourself, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. I've got more stories to share about navigating life as a successful Black woman in spaces where people don't always expect to see us thriving. Until next time, remember, know your worth, stand in your power, and never let anyone dim your light. Stay strong, beautiful people. I'll see you in the next one.